Grinding. Here we go. Hi, and good morning. Welcome to Eye Openers. Thank you so much, Dr. Kenneth Cooper, for joining us this morning.
Thank you for having me, Brittany. I appreciate it.
Of course, but a morning for me would not be complete without a cup of coffee. That is the first thing that opens my eyes in the morning. Truth be told, this is like my second cup because my kids get up right at 6 a.m. So we need something to, fuel that mom morning. So this is my first coffee with you and probably the less interrupted of the two. But you do not need coffee to bring insight and open your eyes in the morning. What is your drink of choice?
Sure. So I have two that I generally go through. It's either my tea. I'll usually do some black tea or something like that, some of those flavored teas. Or there's a turmeric shot, cold shot, that I'll take a turmeric shot. And then if I don't drink my tea after that, I'll have this little mix. It's like a turmeric and citrus and all that kind of like mix that I will drink. So I've never been much of a coffee drinker since I was a kid. My grandma, how we always trying to get into your grandma's drinks, and I'm like, "What is that, grandma?" She's like, "Here, drink it." And you drink those coffee, like, "Oh, this is horrible." And so ever since then, no matter what, anything with coffee in it, I taste that just pure black coffeeness in it, and I'm just
Yeah.
like, nope. So
Nope. Yeah. That's interesting. It's so interesting how our taste gets shaped, right? Because you're right,
right,
there's all these other influences and where's that shift that happens? It's like you don't like the taste of coffee as a kid, right? And then all of a sudden it's like, oh, this isn't so bad. I will drink this every single morning.
exactly. But then
So
in college, you decide to listen to your friends who try to convince you that espresso is not just coffee. Like you should, no, you just haven't had the right coffee. So we're in Paris and they give me this cup with this white foam on the top. They're like, dude, like you need this, like drink this. It's awesome. I was like, but isn't this just coffee? They're like, no, 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 no. Trust us, drink it. And so I took a sip and I was like, yeah, this is just coffee with like some kind of foam on top. Thanks a lot, guys. Thanks a
yeah.
lot. Now you've made me hate it even more.
Well, hey, you got to know what you like. I mean, that's true for all areas. But I have to speak to that turmeric mix. I drink sometimes a turmeric and ginger tea
Hmm.
and talk about like clearing the sinuses. Man, if you take a sip of this, you do not need anything else. You are ready to go the whole day.
I don't
So
think mine's quite that potent, but it's still, yeah. But hey, yeah, I've heard, yeah, yeah, I
yeah,
love it honestly because it's like turmeric and then like orange, citrus like mix, and they add the black pepper and all that to kind of help it dissolve. But in truth, that orange and citrus gives it a natural sweetness, so I don't need to add honey or anything to it, and it's awesome.
mm,
Someone put me onto drinking turmeric, and so hey, there you go. I
never
agree
looked
with you.
back. Awesome.
I
Um,
jumped on the bandwagon.
Well, beyond these initial things that we use to get us up and going in the morning, the whole purpose of this show, Eye Openers, is to really help business owners everywhere realize that other people go through similar challenges, maybe at a different scale, maybe has a little different flavor to it, but that all of us are working through different challenges to meet our goals. And with that, the best thing we can do is learn to talk about it and come together. And so that's why I started this show. Thank you so much. Can you guys believe he volunteered to be here, crack himself open and let us get a look inside. So thanks
Don't
again.
let Brittany lie to you. She's a really good, arm twisting, persuasive individual. So if she reaches out to you, save yourselves the heartache and pain and just say yes initially, and you'll be all right. You'll be much better for it. Trust me. Okay.
No, I wasn't too mean, right? So can we call you Ken for the show or should we continue to do Dr. Kenneth Cooper? You let me.
Dr. K. So that's
Dr.
typically
K.
what
Okay.
everyone kind of calls me. Dr. K works fine.
Cool. I have a friend who's Dr. Ken. So Dr. K, I got that.
Awesome.
So Dr. K is a recognized industry leader in cybersecurity, I believe, like at least 25 years, right? Of leading here and is considered one of the leading innovators in cybersecurity controls development, program guidance, and global implementation of data protection, data privacy, which is becoming bigger and bigger of an issue here, cyber risk, threat assessment. Wow. You also teach, of course, is at Ottawa University, Colorado State, St. Petersburg, and Southern New Hampshire University. So you are a busy guy.
Yeah, I've scaled that back a little bit, but yes.
No, but it's cool. I love to see when people also have that teaching component, because
Right.
it's like a way of giving back, or it's a way of sharing the knowledge
Exactly.
with
That's exactly what it
generations.
is. Mhm.
And lastly, you've developed and led global security modernization efforts for the defense, state agencies, technology, and media organizations. You guys, there's many more things on here, but for the sake of the show, we're going to keep moving. So thanks again, officially, for being here. Now, one thing that got me really excited about talking with you and spending more time reading in this industry, because it's not my industry I spend every day in, but I work a lot with psychological safety, and I'm working to help teams and people feel safer in their organizations so that they can take a risk and reach out and access their full potential. But one thing that I think is causing people to not feel super safe is what's going on with data online. We hear about breaches every day, and yet our whole lives rely on the web and technology. You know, what does a day in the life look like for you, right? Because this is becoming a bigger problem. Like we saw the takeover of the gas pipeline,
Right.
and what happened there. And I think this is just the beginning. So tell us a bit about, like, you know, your problem solving and what really got you into this.
You know, when we think about it from a data protection perspective, it's really about understanding what's happening with that information and basically who's seeing it and what can they do with it, right? And so one of the things that I deal with the majority of my clients is that understanding piece, right? And you referenced the colonial pipeline. If we think about it, if we had simply done one simple thing, questioned, okay, we're going to allow our employees to get online. They're going to get online from the same systems that they use for day to day operations.
Mm-hmm.
The question is, are those systems safe from like the kid in the basement or the terrorists in China or whoever doing something really simple that I teach students when I'm on my teacher side how to do every single day? Right. And the answer to that question would have been a resounding no. And that would have solved their problem. And then we would have begun that process. So I say that to say you have to think of data the same way, meaning we don't have to be paranoid that, you know, Big Brother or whoever is going to steal our information, because let's be honest, if they want it, they're going to get it, period. Right. So that's just not there. But the truth is, what you have to understand is that we can all do some very basic things, just being a little bit careful, meaning don't just give our information, personal information, to anyone, right? If we don't know who it's going to, or don't know where the information that we're asking for, where the source of the request is coming from, don't do it, right? If you can't verify, don't do it. And then the other thing is just that sometimes some agencies, because they just don't know any better, they need certain elements of our personal information to track us, to discern us from, you know, our next door neighbor, or from, you know, that close family member, or that friend, or whoever who was born on the same day, that, you know, and all that stuff, that's the same age, same height, you know, same weight, those sorts of things, right? So sometimes we do have to give some information, but we just have to be cognizant of how we give it, right? Meaning, or do we trust the person is going to put some basic things in place, have some basic endpoint protections on your systems and things like that. And so for me, I have to look at that to scale, right? For large enterprise, even small businesses. And that's basically kind of one of the first things I start with, is just a basic kind of assessment of what are you doing with the information that you have? Where does it sit when no one's using it? Where does it go, you know, when you're sending it to somewhere? And how do your people access it, whether they're accessing it from home or from in the office? And are we putting basic things like adding passwords, adding encryption, those really, really simple things that even, you know, the folks on, you know, this thing meeting at home can do, because we have a lot of those tools available to you. So at the end of the day, it's just about understanding and asking simple questions. Do I trust where information is going? Do I trust the source of request for my information? And when I do give it to them, if I make that choice, what are they going to do with it? And
Mm.
how much insight do I have to that? And that's really kind of what it boils down to. And that doesn't matter at what level you're looking at on these are all the same questions.
Great. Great. I imagine that this is like totally off kind of topic, but I'm personally curious. I imagine you guys are starting to look at what this means for cryptocurrency.
So, well, I laugh when you ask that because I have
You're not allowed to talk about this.
no, it's not that.
Okay.
It's just that one of my students, because I have clients, right, and we deal in digital data and things like that. And digital currency, that's something on the government side, that's not as big of a question, but most is for people's personal investments and things like that. But anyway, I had a student, she asked me about this very same thing. How do I protect transferring? She did a big transfer of Bitcoin. And along the way, long story short, one of her Bitcoins got lost, and it was somewhere in the neighborhood of 25,000, 30K, something like that. And she was like, "Hey, would you help me to track it down?" And I was like, "Sure, I could, but it's the thing that there are safeguards in place for transferring Bitcoin for a reason, because the people on the back end, they don't want that liability. Because in truth, they put the onus on the folks doing the transactions, because
Mhm.
for them, realistically, if they really, really needed to dig down into your transactions to find it for you, they could, but that's time, that's effort, that's liability, right? And they don't want that capability so people don't accuse them of doing something wrong. And then
Mm.
she goes, "Well, I'll give you half if you help me find it." I was like, "Honestly, here's what I would recommend for you. You chalk that up as a loss, because the level of effort that it's going to take for me to track it down and come in and getting access to your system and all that kind of stuff, by the time it's all said and done, it's really not going to be worth the time and effort, because at the end of the day, you haven't truly lost anything, right? It's like what you put in, what you got out, you transfer, you lost one of those like coins, but at the end of the day, your overall gains
Still, yeah.
outweigh the level of effort it would take for you to try to search down one Bitcoin transaction.
Right,
And
right.
those exchanges are very secure. It's how well you keep your keys and what you link to your accounts that creates the insecurities. And so, yeah, those conversations come up, but less and from my clients, and things like that, and more from like my students, because everybody wants to get into Bitcoin. It's the new next big thing.
Right, right. So I think
What's his name? Damon, the actor, Matt Damon, I think just did a freaking
yes,
advertisement or something on Hulu advertising.
for Coinbase, right?
And I must have rolled over it laughing when I saw that, right? So,
Yeah.
but Bitcoin is, it's a great investment. I actually have some colleagues. We actually are investing in a major Bitcoin exchange type of a
Cool.
thing.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's just I would just urge caution, right? Treat it
Right.
you would any other financial transaction, like give it the necessary caution it deserves.
Right. But it was really good to hear you say, like, it's that in and of itself is secure. It's you, the human error of having to manage your
Oh,
stuff, your key, right,
yeah.
to keep
They
it
give
that.
you like 10 to 12 individual keys that you have to verify anytime you make a transaction. So it's like and that's like if your like say phone or computer that you're on is hacked, and then you're entering that in there in those transfers, that's the only way someone could send. And that's what I told her. The only way that their stuff would have gotten stolen, your system would have already had to have been compromised when you
Yeah.
sent it. And
Yeah.
that's not, a problem for the Bitcoin people. That's a you problem kind of
That's
thing.
a you problem. Bring it back to that, right?
Right.
So, tell us a little bit about your story. What got you down the path of being an entrepreneur?
Well, so when I was younger, and relative for me, right? When I was, let's narrow that. Let's say when I was roughly high school, a buddy of mine, we were very big into, he liked to collect comic books, basically, right?
Mhm.
And we'd always look for these rare comic books, and then whenever we need money for the summer, whatever the case may be, we'd go and sell these comic books and buy and sell. But then one day, his at the time stepdad said, "Hey, why don't you guys come work with me? I'm gonna do this garage shop, blah blah blah." And he had us walking around the neighborhoods, handing out the flyers, doing all that stuff. But at the end of the day, we were like, wait a minute, we aren't like making any money off of this, kind of like he's the one that's been like, what are we here for, kind of a thing, right? And so it's just one of those things. It started leading to discussions of then we talked about comic books and how like a number one Superman issue is worth like $10,000 if you can find one that's in pristine condition. And then we thought it into baseball cards, how a little card, can be worth, like thousands of dollars if it's a certain one, et cetera, et cetera. So the conversation about the SFA, and then we jumped to this whole idea of, because we were both in electronics and technology, talk about different stores at the time were available to you of buying, goods wholesale and selling them retail. And then we talking about, Best Buy, like back then we're like, hey, Best Buys are like individually like owned and individually managed, kind of like McDonald's, blah, blah, blah. So we said, you know what? One of these days, you and I should open up our own like computer store where, not like some where you can buy prefabricated stuff like a Best Buy or a wholesaler. Like we should actually open up where we basically, design systems for people and help people do this. And that's how it started because we both, especially me, we would build computers and design computers and make our own and do those sorts of things. And we would start doing that for like our friends and colleagues, and people would then come to us and offer us money to do these builds. And then he eventually kind of went a separate path. And I stayed on that path because I enjoyed it so much. And so that evolved into, as I then got into college and then got older, I began to kind of do these things for other people. And they started to be like, oh, hey, you're really good at this. Why don't you come work for me or come do this or come do that? And then that escalated to me working whilst in college for AT&T Baird, which was bought out by Lucent Technologies. And then as I started making more connections through my college days and then my military days and different people, different organizations, major organizations that control, security and control specific, aspects of how different things are processed and data is moved and systems are protected, etc. They would specifically come to me because of my engineering background, my experience, and my skill set, and say, hey, we have this problem, and everyone's telling us that it can't be done, right? I was the can you solve the it can't be done problem because I kind of set myself up to be that guy, and I would solve these problems, and it would be for these major companies making like millions of dollars. And one day I was like, I could do this for myself and cut out the middleman sometimes for a lot of smaller companies that don't have millions and billions of dollars, but everyone needs this capability to be able to protect what's important to them, right? Protect their livelihood, their systems from hackers, etc. And so it was always an idea, and the idea then sprung into realism when I got around other colleagues and friends, and people would tell me, you do XYZ for all of these major companies and corporations and conglomerates. And it's like, why don't you just do this for yourself? And one day I was like, I don't know because I've always said that I would. And like I literally like just one day my friend was like, hey, your buddy's starting his own company. And my, significant other time was like, why don't you help him? Because she like would talk to us. She was like, he doesn't have your technical skills. So why don't you help him? And I was like, you know what? I'll help him. And before you know it, it was our company and then it was my company.
Okay.
And that's kind of the shortened version of how I got there, right? It's just always something that I've always said that someday I would have my own company so that I can do things for others, but do it for myself and not be specifically limited of what I could and couldn't do because of cost or affordability or something like that because I was working for someone else.
Right, right. And so now you get to call the shots, you get to solve problems of any scale, of any kind.
Exactly.
That's awesome. So you really got to move into your full potential and not have somebody dictating that for you.
Exactly. They still try, but it just I just don't have to listen.
Well, now who tries to do that? The client? They just stop solving our problems so well. That's
It's
awesome.
true, yeah. I'm very much one of those people that's like, hey, because I come from a technical background, and that's a huge paradigm shift when you now have to be, the person in charge of everybody, not just worry about the technology. but it's just I don't argue. I'm like, I won't argue with you. I will listen to what you have going on. I will offer you multiple options. I will recommend one or the other based on kind of where you are financially and where you are from a needs based perspective. But you get some people like, no, 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 we want, it to be this way and look like this and be this way and be that. And I was like, okay, so tell you what, for argument's sake, here's what's going to happen if we go down that path. But if you really want me to go down that path, we'll go down that path. And when it fails, because it will,
Mm.
just remember we had this discussion early on where I said you don't want to go down this path. So I've done that once or twice. And then once you do it once or twice, you don't have to ever have to worry about arguing over that like anymore. And so now it's like I'll make the recommendation and here's some options. And because I like to be very thorough, very detailed with people, help them understand I didn't come to this particular path of decision lightly. I'm
Mhm.
literally thinking about you. I'm not thinking about me, because the atypical consultant, you want to get in, right? Create an engagement, prolong that engagement for as long as possible so you can make the most money, right? And, my business colleagues give me such a hard time about this because that's not what I do. I want to come in and solve a problem for you. And I'm going to solve this problem as efficiently and as quickly as I can. Because here's the upside. If I solve this problem for you, I already know you have other problems. So I don't need to prolong my stay to make you then have me do other stuff for you just because I'm there. It's more like when I'm ready to leave, you're going to be like, hey, 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 don't go yet because we have this other thing. Can you do this for us? Yeah,
Right.
absolutely. Right.
Right.
And then
Awesome.
they tell their business leaders and everybody, they're like, hey, so he not only does he solve problems, but he does it efficiently and he doesn't like make us pay more than what it's going to cost us to do it kind of
Yeah.
thing, right?
Right.
You go
So
ahead.
I hear a tremendous amount of integrity in there. And it sounds like that's probably a driving principle for you guys, especially since you are getting access to so many people's data and like sensitive information, right? So integrity has to be a driving force for you guys.
This is true. Now it's
Yeah.
code of ethics. In truth, I'm I'm ex-military. I come from the military, so integrity. The Air Force, right? We have our core values: integrity first, service before self, and excellence in all we do. I still live those core values to this day. But as a CISSP, right, a certified system security professional, as well as a person who writes these exams, as well as the person who writes the controls that go into the overall implementation from NIST ISO. When we get that first certification, we sign this little document that says you won't use the knowledge and information that you gain for doing bad things. And I live by those things. Not everybody does. Because otherwise we wouldn't have hackers, right? But it's true. Integrity is important, and a code of ethics is important because people have to trust you. And as you mentioned, they give you access to all of their, I don't like using that dirty laundry term. They give you access to all of the things that could be of detriment to them holistically, right?
Mhm.
Both
Mhm.
professionally and personally.
Right.
And they have to trust that you won't do something with that that's going to cause them hurt or harm or financial, loss, whatever the case may be.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. You teed it up so nicely there a few minutes ago, saying that when you came into this, you're a technical guy, you got that technical background, yet
Right,
here you find yourself responsible for managing a team, and sometimes you're managing like the client's team too. What, like in the current state that your business is in, which you have several employees, and managing big projects, what was unexpected? You went into business and picturing it one way, imagining one thing.
right.
Where you're at now, like what was unexpected about where you find yourself?
Really the transition as a whole, because when I had a business partner, my initial business partner, he was technically like the CEO, right? He was a little bit older, a little bit more used to dealing with the executives on a day to day. I only deal with the executives when I needed to, like when somebody didn't understand something and I needed to explain to them, kind of a thing, right? And so the transition holistically, I'm used to being in charge of systems technology because those things in truth, like, and I want to be really honest for like a couple of minutes here. Um, those things are easy. People are not. right? Because you have to deal with personalities, personality types, you have to deal with moods, you have to deal with, egos, the whole 9 yards. And I can deal with that. But when you have to deal with all those things, sometimes with the person sitting across from you that has to make a decision on whether or not what you're trying to do will be successful or not, and they don't focus on the success or failure, but more on their personal right gain or loss or whatever the case may be, depending upon which position they're sitting in, right? And so
Mhm.
for me, it's been that kind of transition of being very less directive in how I speak to people, regardless of the level, and more empathetic in trying to understand where they're coming from when they have either pushback or when they have specific conflict that has nothing to do with necessarily the solution or problem I'm trying to solve, and more so about what's going on with them that day or what's going on with, like the CTO and the CEO maybe at odds, or the CISO and the CIO may be having some sort of internal quarrel or something that I may not necessarily know about, so they may be inadvertently trying to cause unnecessary problems. So it's dealing with that stuff for me has
Mhm.
been something that I've had to learn. And my, former partner, she was very good at helping me to understand that, well, if you want to be successful, right? She would tell me like regularly, like, you're the CEO now. She's like, you're not an individual contributor anymore. You're not just the CTO anymore. You're the CEO, meaning everyone is looking to you for that leadership, for that guidance. You have to guide the direction and the vision of where you want the company to go, because
Yeah.
no one else is going to do it. And it's just that transition from, if they go the path that I tell them, they'll be successful. If they don't, they won't. I don't care. It's not gonna affect me one way or the other. Well, now it does, and I have to think about that now. So
Mhm.
if
Mhm.
that answers your
So,
question.
what would you identify as the biggest challenge for you within that? You just kind of shaped it, just kind of outlined it. Let's say you have somebody in front of you, right? They're like, before you could have been like, you know what, they don't get it, I don't care. But now you kind of are responsible for shaping
Right.
their response to it and getting them on the bus, so to speak.
Hmm.
Where do you find like I can't get around this, or where do you get stuck in that?
It's empathy, right? I mean, that's really the best way that I can describe it, is that it's empathy and building that rapport with them from less of a business perspective of I need them to freaking get on board so I can make this money, versus, you know what, let me see what drives this person. Because maybe if I understand what drives them better and transition the conflict from the issue itself and focus more on, let me just get to know this individual. And 9 times out of 10, if you even just make that effort, even just a little, especially at my level, and even if they're not at the same level, but they're still the one deciding, if you just make the person feel welcome, make the person feel like you actually kind of care about what they have to say and mean it, right? Kind of a thing.
You got to meet.
You find, right, that those guards tend to come down a lot easier. And then that facilitates making something that has been very difficult or hard that much easier. And in truth, you have to sometimes be willing to step back and say, you know what? Um, if this is what you need, right, to feel comfortable, you have to be willing to give that to that person, as long as it's within the realms of, not compromising your own integrity and those sorts of things, the obvious. And sometimes you just have to say, okay, you know what, tell you what, I don't have to win, right? Because I'm a game theory advocate, because I teach that a lot as well too. And then one of the biggest things about game theory is that you don't always know people's intentions. You don't always know people's motivations. But you can take two things about every individual in every situation. One, assume that they're a rational decision maker, meaning they're just as smart as you on, some level. And two, they're going to do what's in their best interest. That's what's going to motivate and drive. I mean, and right, so they're going to play a zero sum game, meaning they're going to play to win. So you just simply have to look at everything from that perspective, and usually you can come up with a way to where you can either decide to play a zero sum game yourself and get nowhere, or do the win win scenario, i.e., Nash's equilibrium, and say, you know what, what's the best outcome here, right? Not just for me, but for both of us, and be willing to give up something in order to gain something down the road. If
Yeah.
that helps you. I know it was probably a long-winded answer for your very simple question.
No, I mean, I love, so I live in the land of like, management, research, psychology, social science, right? And to
Mhm.
hear you like apply these like game theories and almost like more math concepts and stuff, it's really cool to hear it in your technical terms, like from your technical brain. And we have to adopt language. We have to kind of like find like a pattern recognition system or whatever
Mhm.
it is that like works for you, and use that. And that's really what we're trying to figure out. We're in these weird conversations, we're in these sales conversations with people.
Right,
And it's like, how do we get to this place where like we
right,
both feel like we're winning, and you get the problem, that you have solved, and I get the problem I have solved, right? And find a way to come together there.
exactly.
Empathy is such a huge part of this. And while I understand that word is not like necessarily scary for people, but they're like, I want to run the other direction from
Oh
that
yeah,
when you bring
it's
up that word.
yeah. You
Is
put
that
yourself in a
relatable?
very vulnerable state and truth for people that you don't know is how someone can look at it like, I don't need to be
Yeah,
empathetic for them. I don't know them. I don't care. Kind of a thing.
yeah, yeah.
But it's difficult. It's very
Right.
it's very difficult, especially coming from someone like me. I come from a military background, very technical. Everything I do is technical. I deal with more technology and resources than people, and even the people that I deal with is very much very transactional, right? It's like, here's what the issue, here's what the solution. Do you understand it? No. Let me explain it. Do you understand now? Yes. Okay. Awesome. Go
Go, go.
forward
Yeah.
and multiply. Then I'm off to the next one. Right.
Right. But at the end of the day, I mean, transactional interaction after transactional interaction might not be completely fulfilling for you.
Correct. It's not. But you learn to settle for what is a short term win, but you lose on the long term gains. And for a long time, I was in that space, right? Because everything is transactional. Like
Mhm.
I could literally pick up a phone or an email or text and contact just about anybody if I needed something to help a colleague or I needed to do this or this, and they'll do it for me, right? But they didn't do it for me necessarily because they wanted to, but they would do it for me because they know that now they can call me and get the same thing in return. Whereas when you build more empathy and build more of a connection with someone, now, some of the people that I have now, some of them are still like that, but a lot of them are transitioned to where now I can call and do those same things. And now they do it because they simply want to do it as a favor for me, as opposed to, okay, yeah, I'm going to keep that one in the, in the favor bank. I'll be able to call Dr. K later on because he'll be able to help me out when I have this problem, right? And now it's more because they want to do it, they'll do it, right? And that's a totally different feeling when you know that someone is doing something for you because out of the fact that they just want to be helpful, kind of thing, as opposed to they want to eventually try to get something from you. And if they don't have anything that they can get from you, they aren't going to lift the finger, right, to help you. And that's just the truth of transactional relationships. If they can't see any gain for them, they aren't going to really put forth effort. They'll placate you and say, yeah. I'll look into it, get back to you.
Yeah,
Right. That's
totally.
the little brush off, right? The executive brush off. Hey, thank you for putting it out to me. I will look into this a little bit further and I'll get back to you as soon as I can. So for those of you out there, if you ever hear anyone, executive or otherwise, say those words to you and you don't know them personally and know that that's just how they talk, don't expect them to get back to you anytime soon. All right. So
Mm,
you have to be persistent and follow
yeah.
up.
Right. What would be the kind of scary or edgy thing to say to somebody in that moment, right? You've gotten this far, you're in front of them, you have this meeting, like they respond that way. What do you do? How, what would be
So for me, right, because again, then it comes down to um, authority, power, and control. Meaning, what sort of real, like, how are you scared that you're going to lose out if you challenge them
Mhm.
versus are you willing to take a chance that you might lose out by challenging? Because you can tell. So when you get those sorts of kind of like blow off responses, then you don't have to be persistent in an annoying kind of a way, like, oh no, really, like, no, no, because then you're really going to tip them out. But if there's a chance, that's when you simply have to be very direct and say, okay, if you're going to get back to me, give me a specific time. Hey, can I contact you in a week? Right? You see a lot of salespeople do this all the time, and this is why they do it, right? Like, can I get back to you in a week? How about if I reach out next Thursday? Or hey, what about if I just follow up with you in 2 weeks? Is there something specific in here that is not clear that maybe I can help clarify so that when you get back to me, next Thursday or whatever, blah, 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 you have everything that you need. So it's one of those where you want to be try to get them to commit to something one way or the other with you.
Mhm.
Don't allow them to just give you the brush off because they will. A lot of executives, honestly, they will.
Right,
But you
right.
have to be willing to basically call them on that brush off without calling them on that brush off. And it's a very it's a very it's a very thin line. You have to learn to walk that line, depending upon what level you're at. Me, I don't really have to worry. But I'm at that point where if I could tell the rest of like, come on, like like Paul, like seriously, like, are you going to do this or not? It's like let me know because if I need to move on, I need to move on. But I can say that, but not everybody.
Right. No, but I think that that's like a really great point. Like, how do we get to the point where we can say that? Like what came to mind for me is the idea of saying, when people say that to me, that typically is their way of doing the brush off without them having to get uncomfortable.
Hmm. And
Right.
make them. You have to be willing, and it's not necessarily making them get uncomfortable. But you have to be willing to make them own what they're really thinking about either you or the product or the service that you're delivering. And if you don't make them get comfortable with being honest about those three things, then you run the chance of you constantly getting that over and over and over and over and over until now you're frustrated, right? And so that's why you just have to be willing at the end of the day because it's scary, Brittany. It's not, especially if you're like, especially if you're somebody in sales or something, and you're trying to make a quota or you're trying to, you don't want to say something that's going to offend them because then you're definitely going to lose them. But if you're too polite, then it's like, they can give you the sense of, okay, yeah, they're gonna like
Yeah.
everything went great. I'm gonna hear from them in 2 weeks. Then you go to your boss, like if that's me or somebody, and say, okay, yeah, so and so said they're gonna get back to me in 2 weeks. My first response, okay, awesome. So what day in 2 weeks? Like, do you have a date? Do you have a time? Do you have something specific so that we know that hey, we can either expect to hear from them with a
Right.
yay or a nay or something, right?
Right. But even I think I'm going to rename this podcast like Get Scary or Get Scared or something because there's so much like that's a fine line that changes everything. Like being willing to say the thing that nobody else will say to that person gets you noticed, gets you. I love your cup, by the way.
Oh,
I don't give a sip.
I have my
Um,
other one with my initial K on there. I figured that would be a little bit too like,
yeah,
you
yeah,
know,
academic or something or
I
ego.
don't want to be pretentious.
Yeah. Um, but what about doing this with inner organizations? Because sales is one thing, and
Hmm.
sometimes these people are strangers, and that adds its own kind of dynamic. But I find that a lot of people, kind of in your shoes, that have come from this technical background, now find themselves like needing to learn all about empathy and use it and like master language and nuance in this way. Um,
Hmm.
that it can be really challenging to do that within your organization. you have relationships with these people, like, it can be challenging.
Right. So I'm the wrong person to ask because everybody that I work for, they know me. And so I come from that engineer's background. And what I mean by that is that we're very um, heady people, very cerebral, meaning
Yeah.
we don't waste time with the small talk, except we're very direct, we're very straightforward, 9 times out of 10. And it's one of those things is like, if we hate it, you're going to know it. If we like it, you're going to know it. Right. And I'm like that with everyone, from my VPs to my CTOs, CISOs, all these people I used to work for. We would go in with conversations and stuff and everything. And we'd have discussions and we'd go through all of this different stuff, even when it's interorganizational stuff.
Mm.
Right. And I would like at time my director was like, Coop, like we got it done. He's like, but such and such, so and so complained about how you talk to them because of the position and the role that they're in. He's like, but don't worry, we got your back because we just, you do it to us. So we expect it. But they were like, but just sometimes be a little bit nicer with how you talk to some people. Make sure and that will be in conversations just with us on the side. When I'm talking to those other people and in these inter-organizations conversations, they know it. And so I always would have a caveat when I have discussions with anyone at any level, um, don't ask me a question unless you want the answer because I'm that guy. I'm not going to be disrespectful to you and I'm not going to be rude, but I'm going to be very direct and I'm going to be very honest. If what you're telling me or giving me or coming at me with is like, malarkey, to use the term,
Yeah.
you're gonna know, and everyone in that room is gonna know that this doesn't make sense, right? I'm not gonna make you look, you know, foolish or anything,
Yeah. Yeah.
but everyone is going to know that this doesn't make any sense, and then you're gonna have to be ready to address that because I've done it, in a lot of major kickoff meetings and stuff like that, and I've heard people come to me like, I am so glad you said that because I didn't understand what they were trying to say. It made no sense how they're going to do it. And we are so glad that you asked that question. Whatever. It's like,
Yeah.
that's what I'm here for, ladies and gentlemen. That's what I'm here for. But yes, so.
So that directness has never got you in trouble? Like,
Oh, I didn't say it's never gotten me in trouble, Brittany. I just said that I'm probably the wrong person to ask as far as how to balance that because when I was in that phase of my career, I've always been that direct. And it would create situations to where somebody, in leadership would hate me, like literally hate me. But they knew that the company or the project would not be successful if I wasn't there. So they would tolerate the fact that they know that I could be a little abrasive, right? And they would just let it slide. But it wasn't until I got around the right people that would say, the reason you didn't get, say, this promotion, or the reason you may not have been put in this particular role, but another role that was leadership, but not really kind of a thing, more influencer than leader, because it's how you handle those kind of soft skills, right? Somebody told me like how doctors, they can have good and bad bedside manners. Like, yeah, you're the doctor with the poor bedside manner. You're the best doctor in the building, and everyone wants you to work on them because you'll save their life, but they won't let you be in a room by yourself with the patient, and everybody else around you just kind of like, balance out your abrasiveness and don't tell you what's really going on, kind of a thing, and and I went through that for a very long time. So yes, it's gotten me in trouble, but it to the point to where it's really more of um, if I was looking to say be on certain projects or be in certain leadership positions, if I wanted them, kind of a thing, it would always boil down to, yes, we want you on this team, but we want so and so to be the one to say like lead it, and then but so and so basically comes to you for technical advice or this or that or expertise, kind of a thing.
Right.
And then when I started getting in more of those kind of leadership roles and leadership positions, kind of a thing, it would just, by managers and different things like that, they would always just ask me just different questions about, oh, how's things going with this person or how is it going with that person. And I was like, Why do you know something I don't know? Because so and so is not saying anything to me, and then it would just be like, the one manager or director who actually, you make the effort to be their friend, and they'll just say like, hey, you might want to kind of just be a little bit more relaxed because sometimes everybody thinks that you're very kind of intense, kind of a thing, whatnot. I'm like, really? Because like nobody said anything to me. And it's like, yeah, and that's what it is. So yeah, it's one of those things.
Right.
You have to have the right people around you, and you have to allow yourself to be open up to the right person that's willing to give you that mentorship and that guidance. But yeah, it's got me into trouble, like, but nothing super bad. Because like I said, I'm never disrespectful and never rude. I'm just very direct and very abrasive, and I'm very much kind of like, how people talk about those the cocky, arrogant people that think they know everything, think they're the smartest person in the room, kind of a thing. That I can admit, and it took me a long time. I was that guy because I'm like, really, this is dumb. That makes no sense. Here's why it's dumb, kind of a thing, and point it out to them, right, kind of thing. And so it created a lot of unnecessary pushback sometimes from colleagues because it wasn't that they thought I was wrong. It was more that because I was always right and let them know that I was always right, they wanted to challenge everything just to find an opportunity to prove you wrong about something. And that's not a really, working environment that you want to be in for any long period of time, kind of a thing.
No. And like when you think about it from like a CEO perspective, think about how wasteful all that energy is
Mhm.
going into that. Like I help teams talk about this all the time. Like think about what would be possible if you guys are able to channel your energy in a collaborative way that was healthy and
Right,
productive versus trying to, make you wrong or like, do something against you because they think you're such a jerk. Like
right,
there's so many in there's so many situations where people have this going on and or they have something against someone and there's like a certain percentage of their mental space that gets put to this.
right, exactly.
And I like try to quantify that for people. And I'm like, look, if 5% of Susie's time and this and that, and it's all spent towards why I need to make myself better or smarter than this person, or why, I need to position myself for this angle over here, like we can squash that and move
Mhm.
all the efforts in the direction that's helpful, that aligns with the business's ultimate goals and visions, and cuts out the malarkey, so to speak, right?
Right, exactly.
That would be way more effective, efficient, and at the end of the day, helps everybody feel like it's a safer environment, even with that directness. Like it
Mhm.
allows for people to be that honest, that transparent, and that direct because they know it's coming from this place of not me trying to put you down, not me trying to prove I'm the smartest, whatever in
Right,
the room, but that
exactly.
we're all moving towards the same goal together.
Mhm, mhm.
By me being honest or blunt or whatever, it helps us get there, right?
Exactly. You can
Like
stop focusing
this.
on challenging the person versus challenging the ideas. You can challenge the idea if you have a better one, but don't challenge the person and indirectly challenge the idea just
Right.
because you want to cause conflict with that individual for no real reason.
Yeah, right. But this can be really challenging to do because, like you said, you come from this technical background, you come from this place, right? And all of a sudden, now you're CEO, you're expected to be this different person with this different skill set, and it doesn't always come naturally. And then on top of that, now your job is to also develop this for other leaders.
Right,
Right? So
exactly.
people can get themselves stuck in that and be like, "I wish I was back in my old job as the engineer, right, or the technician that was just responsible for their thing." And
Right.
all the time, like, "What did I do? Why did I make this company? Like, this is not what I wanted for myself." But you don't have to jump. You don't have to run away from this company
Exactly.
or light it on
Exactly.
fire. And if I see so much self-sabotage because, like, people actually realize, "I don't wanna manage more people. I don't want it to grow." And I see
Oh
that
yeah, I've seen very a lot
time.
of people do that. Like
Yeah,
the limited, we call it the limited thinking, right? You are limiting yourself because you have allowed yourself to be complacent with where you are, and you've convinced yourself that you're happy about it, but in truth, you're not. You're just unwilling, right, to do the work that it would take to get outside of that space. And it took me a long time. Again, it's just you have to get around the right person or persons that are invested in you as an individual and not just transactionally, to where they start to help you to understand these things about yourself and about the situations, to where you then you start to think like, oh, okay,
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
that
Right.
makes sense. That makes sense. But you still got to do the work, right? It's still it takes work. It's not an overnight transition. That's for sure.
It's not. And you lived through many of these little like growing pains, and you've created some self-awareness. What's that next level of growth for you right now?
Honestly, it's just at this point for me, I now have to find the balance of who I am and what I got into this for versus what I need to do so that the company itself will grow to a level to be more sustainable for other individuals. Because I'm very much trying to help folks get into technology, especially like women. There's far few women in technology career fields,
Yes,
minorities, veterans and things like that. And so that's
totally.
kind of like just a personal thing of mine, is to have that, because I know that there are a lot of incredibly brilliant, women out there, far beyond the small pool that we see. And I run into them like regularly just in different things that I do. And so I try to help promote them as well too, and then minorities and
Mhm.
um, veterans, because sometimes people put stigmas on certain groups or with certain backgrounds, etc., and things like that. And I'm very much a proponent of, let's not necessarily judge the person of say where they came from, or a particular background that they may have, and let's look at it at face value. And then plus, since I'm an adjunct, I also am in the unique position of, if they don't know and understand it, I can help them, right? I can help them to better understand what they need and where they need to go. So for me, I'm trying to take a little bit of a different direction from a focus of where we focus the energy and effort, as far as my company, so that at the end of the day, when I'm at the point where I'm retired and I'm, kind of not doing this on a regular basis anymore, I just want to be able to say, hey, look back and say, well, at least I did this one thing that I can say, hey, was like an amazing thing. So we just sit in the growth phase, because initially we were like, I wasn't necessarily looking at growth, just more like developing, just steady client base. And
Right.
now I want to grow the company, but I need to grow it very specifically, very deliberately, in a direction that creates a company that I personally am proud of, right? It's less about how someone else views the company, and it's more about, how do I view it? Like, am I doing the things that I said that I wanted to do when I started this
Mhm.
career, kind of a thing.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so, and I work in across multiple different states right now, and I've gone through a couple of different business partners, because again, sometimes you have differing viewpoints and differing perspectives of where you want the company to be. Because some people wanted to grow super fast right away, use the connections, and make a ton of money. It's like, yeah, we all want to make a ton of money, but I'm very more methodical and deliberate. I want to build the right connections and grow at the right pace, so that when we are at the stage of making, like, several $1 million or whatever the case may be, it's not something so fast to where we end up being like WeWork and some of those other guys, where you start doing the wrong things and then you rise to the top too fast and come crashing down, like
Or you
right.
chase the money, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. Well, man, I so appreciate you saying that. I mean, I think it's so important to talk about intentionality behind what we're doing, and not just growth for growth's sake. I
right.
spend like several hours a day talking with people about that. Like, well, why are we doing this? Why do what is this pursuit about? And really exploring that connection between, what do you really need your business to do for you, and why?
Right.
in connecting that, right? And there's so much disconnect there. And that's where we get lost with initiatives that we're pursuing, lost with just chasing the dollars instead of, does this actually make sense for us?
Exactly.
So I really appreciate you talking about that and sharing that with the community.
There's my last business partner, one of the reasons that we got into big conflict is her major thing was 80% of your time should be spent on making money for the company. Like 80%. And I'm like, okay, but what if I'm spending that 80% of the time doing something that promotes the company, but doesn't necessarily make money directly, but it could later on? No, that's in the 20%. You shouldn't do that. And it was just one of those things to where everything you do should be about how do you monetize this? How do you monetize that? How do you, get, and it's like, and I know we live in America, right? It's a capitalist society. It's all about, making the almighty dollar. I get it. But, and like I said, our biggest conflict was that because my first thought is not always, how can I turn this into a financial gain? My first thought is always, how can I make this beneficial for me and the people that I'm doing it for? And then if there's a way to have see some financial gains from it, then I look at it like afterwards. And most business people say that's probably not a good business philosophy, and I would just simply argue, well, it depends, right? Because as you mentioned, if what I'm doing is something very deliberate, and if I'm doing something that's going to benefit someone else that has a potential to, say, bring in, say, some business or something like that from another client or colleague or associate later on, then I was still successful here. So even if this person didn't pay me, hundreds of thousands of dollars, but because I did something for them because they needed it and I helped them, and then they have someone that does want to pay me hundreds of thousands of dollars, guess what? They're going to be my biggest, all right, cheerleader for that person when that person's thinking about, hey, I need, XYZ job done. It's like one of my clients now, one of my students runs an MSP. I teach cybersecurity. I helped him learn stuff, in a way that, no one else has before. So his company is an MSP for a major like online company that does a lot of training, blah, 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 etc. Long story short, they needed help in the realm of cybersecurity. He basically, recommended that they talk to me. He made the introduction. And now that's a client of mine. It's like that. It's like I did something simple for him, which I love to do, just helped him to better understand cybersecurity. He like literally gave me an introduction to a client that I wasn't even looking for. Right. And now that's, a client that I work with like consistently right now through a project that they have going on for, the state of New Jersey out there. So, and it's stuff like that I like to do, kind of.
Yeah. Yeah, it speaks back to that integrity, being of service first. Because if you have a crappy offering, a crappy service, crappy product, like you can only put so much lipstick on a pig and people figure that out, right?
Right. What's
Well,
the
hey,
other thing? Even if you take, poop and you dress it up all nice and garnish it and you put it on the plate, still poop on the plate, right? And it's still gonna stink.
yeah, that's right. I love it. Well, I'm so glad we could end with these awesome sayings and cliches, but it's, hey, at the end of the day, when it's true, it's true. It has been so fun chatting with you. Thank you so much for your candidness, your integrity, your honesty. It has been eye-opening, and I hope that you guys have also gained insight in the audience. I'm going to add in some ways for people to reach you. And the comments, we can add in ways for people to contact you or find your website or whatever if they have questions or have a reason to get in touch. So thanks again. Thank you, Dr. K. It has been an absolute pleasure, and we'll chat with you guys soon.
You're welcome. Thanks, Brittany. Enjoy.